Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Have History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and as we progress with A.P. Hill's life, the Civil War has just erupted, and he has been training his troops at Harper's Ferry. In June 1861, Federal troops descended upon the town of Romney, about 43 miles from Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston's headquarters at Winchester, Virginia. Johnston sent A.P. Hill with the 13th and 10th Virginia Infantry Regiments, along with the 3rd Tennessee, but when they arrived at Romney, Federal troops had pulled back about 18 miles to New Creek. Not to be outdone, Hill sent a few companies from each regiment to New Creek, where a small skirmish occurred. Back in Romney, Hill's commissary officer reported that there was no beef to issue to his men as rations. Hill stated, "Very well, you can report back to your company. We have no earthly use for a commissary who in a rich country like this cannot furnish regular rations for the men." Hill mounted his horse and left camp. He would arrive sometime later, driving a herd of cattle into town. The men cheered their commander for his actions. In the expedition on Romney, Hill had commanded 3 regiments, followed orders explicitly, and performed well in his role. He desired promotion in the worst way. One of his political allies assured him that he was asserting all the political power he could in Richmond to get Hill promoted. Hill responded, "You will never succeed. President Davis does not like me. If he has his way, I will remain in command of my gallant little regiment until the war closes." An influx of new troops into Johnston's command brought Hill more disappointment. The commander reorganized his force into 4 brigades, under Thomas J. Jackson, Bernard B., Francis S. Bartow, and Hill's regiment under Arnold Elzey. He had been passed over for promotion. On the morning of July 18, 1861, orders came to break camp. Johnston had been ordered to join P.G.T. Beauregard's army near Manassas. A battle was imminent. Once at the junction, the 13th and Hill were detached from the brigade and sent to guard the railroad and the fords along Bull Run to the right of the Confederate line. Hill and his men despaired at the thought of missing out on the war. When the Union Army routed and the Confederate Army pursued, Hill's command saw no action and made it to Fairfax Courthouse, where they set up camp and performed monotonous guard duty. Although a dull time, Hill couldn't be happier in August because Dolly, who had went to live in Nashville with her uncle, gave birth to another daughter. She was named Frances Russell. Hill would call her Russie. Receiving word of her birth gave him great joy, and he quickly inquired about all the details about the new child. Although his thoughts were with his family, his body was subject to the hot, muggy weather around Fairfax Courthouse. His men starved due to commissary incompetence, and trainloads of sick soldiers suffering from typhoid fever, measles, and mumps left town. At one point, Hill's regiment was to march along the outer perimeter of the army. Hill was seen on numerous occasions during the march dismounting and letting weak or tired soldiers ride until the soldier regained their strength. A sergeant on guard duty fondly remembered that Hill came up to him, noticed his weariness, and offered to stand guard while the sergeant got some rest. In September, Hill was sick. His regiment did win some acclaim, though, when they took 8 Federal prisoners without firing a shot during their time at Fairfax Courthouse. Performing essentially guard duty along the border between 2 nations was fairly boring work except for the occasional brush with the enemy. Hill made the comment that General E. Kirby Smith has assumed the command of our division of the Army, and I hope that his young and vigorous counsels may at least force us to be killed on the field rather than be dying of these pestilential fevers. Sickness then forced Hill temporarily to turn over command of the 13th Virginia to Major James B. Terrell, and this indisposition cost Hill another chance at military recognition. On September 11th, a Federal force of 1,800 infantry and cavalry, along with a heavy battery, tried to establish an outpost at the village of Lewinsville. Jeb Stuart learned of the move and responded by advancing with 350 men of the 13th Virginia, a section of artillery, and 2 companies of cavalry. Stuart caught the Federals unprepared and sent the 13th Virginia charging into the exposed right flank. Fighting lasted about 90 minutes before the Union soldiers fled. While Stuart received most of the credit for the affair, Major Terrell got praise that would have gone to Hill had he not been struggling in Fairfax to regain his strength. A week later, Hill was back in command of the 13th, but he longed to see his family. By this point, Nashville had become unbearable for Dolly and the children, and she moved in with her family in Kentucky behind Union lines. There was no telling when the Hill family would be reunited. On September 19th, during a grand review for Johnston, the 13th Virginia was presented with a flag made from Dolly's wedding dress. A member of the regiment remembered, "The flag is a beautiful silk banner, the handiwork of the accomplished lady of our colonel, and will be prized and defended as the gift of a fair daughter of unhappy Kentucky, bidding us a hearty Godspeed in fighting the battles of the South." His unit moved close to Manassas Junction and stayed there into the winter. By November, Hill's family had been smuggled into Virginia and were in Culpeper. Powell went to visit them as soon as he could, but he had to get back to the ranks. When his brigade commander was absent, Hill would be acting brigade commander. By mid-December, the regiment went into winter quarters, building cabins out of trees available in the area and using what was left to fuel the fires to keep them warm. Hill began to express anti-Northern sentiment as he huddled in his cabin. "What changes, my God, what changes since last we met? Even though we looked forward to this rupture, yet how little idea we had of the reality of things as they now are, and how many of our old friends, upon whom we would have staked our last dime, have shown the cloven foot and are now most bitter in this war of subjugation. Yet, none the less, by the blessing of God and hearts that will never grow faint, we will whip the hounds yet, and then God grant that a gulf as deep and as wide as hell may interpose between us." He also had doubts about the war itself, stating, "We all are persecuted, and for what? Nothing but to get politicians out of a bad scrape they have talked themselves into." In February 1862, Hill received his long-desired promotion to brigadier general after Joseph E. Johnston recommended him for that rank. He would receive his brigade on March 24th. It consisted of the 1st, 7th, 11th, and 17th Virginia Infantry Regiments, part of James Longstreet's former brigade command. Powell Hill went to meet them at their camps around Orange Courthouse, where he greeted the regiments and attended a cotillion in the town. One soldier remembered that he demonstrated surprising agility on the dance floor. On April 2nd, he and his command received orders to move out to the east of Richmond. Union Army Commander General George McClellan was preparing to invade the Old Dominion from the peninsula made up from the James and York rivers. By the 16th, Hill's brigade arrived at Richmond and embarked on boats down the James River to King's Landing, near the town of Williamsburg. Then the brigade slogged through the mud-caked roads to the Confederate entrenchments around Yorktown. Hill was in the division commanded by James Longstreet, who proved to be a nemesis for Hill throughout the rest of the war. 3 of Longstreet's 4 children had died from scarlet fever earlier in the year. The division commander had become uncommunicative and reserved. Between such a person and the normally genial, outgoing Hill, friction was inevitable. On the peninsula at Wynn's Mill, Hill's men fortified their position until the 1st of May, when Johnston realized his line could not withstand an artillery bombardment, the likes of which McClellan had planned, so the brigade moved westward, past the line of earthworks near Williamsburg. May 5th was a nasty Monday in which a cold downpour limited the visibility and thoroughly drenched everything. It was also the day that Hill got his first taste of battle in the Civil War.